Chapter 1, The Silence Beyond the Trees. The forest was different now. Gone were the golden hues of sunlight trickling through high canopies. Gone were the comforting chirps, rustles, and gentle breezes that once carried the whispers of woodland life. Now, the trees stood like tall, petrified corpses, naked and gnarled, stretching to a sky perpetually veiled by grey mist. A deathly silence reigned. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, unwilling to disturb whatever unholy thing had sunk its teeth into the heart of the forest. Bambi stood at the edge of the clearing, his hooves trembling slightly in the dirt, though the air was still. His once wide, innocent eyes were sunken now, dark hollows reflecting fear and confusion. He wasn't a fawn anymore. Time had aged him into a stag with tall antlers and a powerful form, but something inside him was withering, something sacred and pure, like the dying flame of an ancient forest spirit. His mother had been gone for years. Taken by man's fire. But this was something worse. The forest was rotting from the inside out. It had started subtly. Birds stopped singing. The streams turned sluggish, cloudy, sour. Fewer animals ventured out. At first, Bambi assumed it was the hunters. But there were no gunshots. No dogs. No scent of smoke or metal. Then, animals began to vanish. Not just wander off or die quietly, no. They disappeared, leaving no trace. Thumper the rabbit had vanished in the middle of a conversation, mid-sentence. One blink and he was gone. Flower, the skunk, had screamed once, an unnatural, blood-curdling shriek that echoed through the woods, and was never seen again. Even friend owl had stopped hooting, his perch long empty. Now, Bambi stood alone, the self-appointed guardian of this cursed forest, the last creature still walking the earth in the shadow of some terrible force. A noise, barely audible, fluttered through the trees. A crunch. A wet shuffle. Then silence. Bambi tensed. His ears flicked. He turned. Nothing. But he could feel it. Watching. Waiting. At the center of the forest, there was a place no one had ever dared to go, an ancient grove where the trees twisted like broken limbs and the ground pulsed, almost as if it were breathing. The animals called it the hollow. They used to say it was sacred, protected by the spirits of those who died under man's hand. But something had awakened in the hollow. Something older than the forest. Something hungrier than man. And now, it was spreading. A sharp, guttural cry shattered the silence. It wasn't animal. It wasn't even human. It was wrong, a twisted, echoing wail that scraped across Bambi's nerves like claws on bone. It came from the east, toward the brook. Toward the place where his mother had died. His hooves moved before he could think, propelling him through the undergrowth. The once familiar forest floor felt wrong beneath him, soft, spongy, as though it had started to rot. The trees seemed to shift as he passed. Their limbs creaking, groaning, reaching. He burst through the brush into the clearing by the brook, and froze. The water was black. Not murky, not muddy, black, like spilled oil or coagulated blood. It didn't flow anymore. It quivered, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't his own. Something was in the water. It rose slowly, impossibly tall, its form shrouded in dripping moss, bark, and bones. Its face was a twisted blend of animal skulls and writhing vines, empty eye sockets staring straight into Bambi's soul. Its limbs were elongated, its fingers dragging the forest floor, snapping twigs like brittle bones. The creature opened its mouth, and Bambi felt a cold rush surge through his chest. Not air. Not sound. A scream that existed only inside his head. He turned to flee, heart pounding, but he wasn't fast enough. The creature didn't chase. It stretched, its neck elongating unnaturally, slithering like a serpent toward him, maw widening to impossible proportions. Bambi leapt into the brush, barely dodging the dripping jaws that snapped shut inches from his flank. He ran. Trees blurred past him, bark clawing at his hide, thorns drawing blood. But he didn't care. The forest had gone mad. It was alive, but in the worst possible way. The ground twisted beneath his hooves, rising like waves. Roots shot up, coiling around his legs. He stumbled, fell hard, gasping, rolling onto his side. Something slithered near his face, thick and wet. A tongue. A vine. He didn't wait to find out. He kicked, screamed, tore free. As he galloped away, the creature's voice invaded his mind again. Bambi. It knew his name. That night, he found shelter under the gnarled roots of a fallen tree. The forest outside was quiet, but not the good kind of quiet. It was the quiet of a predator holding its breath before the strike. He curled himself into the shadows, ears twitching, eyes wide open. In the distance, he heard laughter. Childlike. Giggling. Innocent. It was his mother's voice. Bambi, come home. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes filled with tears. No. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. Bambi, the voice sang again, echoing through the trees, distorted, like it was underwater, or buried deep underground. The laughter turned to screaming. High-pitched. Agonizing. Endless. The roots trembled beneath him. Something was crawling toward him in the dark. He could hear it, scraping, clicking, wet breathing. Bambi rose slowly, antlers brushing the bark above him. His legs shook. Whatever it was close now. Just beyond the roots. Then, silence. He held his breath. Nothing. A single sound broke the stillness. Bambi, the voice whispered again, this time from right behind him. He turned. There was nothing there. But when he looked down at the earth, something had changed. The ground was no longer just dirt. It was faces. Thousands of faces, twisted, half submerged in the soil, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. Deer. Rabbits. Owls. Foxes. Even man. All buried beneath the forest, trapped in eternal torment. And they were moving, writhing, mouths twitching, eyes following him. Bambi backed away, trembling violently, antlers scraping the roots above. The faces moved with him, stretching, pulling, whispering in hundreds of voices at once. You should have left. You should have left. Then they all screamed. He ran again, deeper into the forest. The trees groaned and bled as he passed. The air was thick, suffocating. The sky above flickered as though a storm was coming, but there was no lightning, just flashes of images, bones hanging from branches, corpses stitched to trunks, animals impaled on roots that moved. By dawn, he collapsed by an ancient stone buried deep in moss, the last place in the forest untouched by rot. He had only fragments of strength left. The trees seemed afraid to encroach here. For now. He looked up. Etched into the stone were old runes, symbols not of man, but something older. Ancient forest magic. Protective magic. But even it felt weaker now, like it too was fading. Something was killing the forest's soul. And it wasn't done yet. Bambi lay his head down, tears mingling with the dirt. He was alone. So very alone. And the thing in the woods, it was playing with him. Calling to him. Mocking his grief, his memories. This forest wasn't home anymore. It was a tomb. A tomb with open eyes. And tomorrow, he'd have to go deeper. Into the hollow. Into the dark heart where death had a name. And it knew his. The morning was a lie. A pale imitation of light seeped through the diseased canopy, casting a colorless hue over the gnarled forest. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't hope. It was the slow, dull flicker of a candle before it gutters out. Bambi rose stiffly from beneath the ancient stone, the only piece of the forest that still resisted the sickness. His coat was matted with blood, some his, some not. He didn't remember sleeping. He didn't remember dreaming. But he woke with the distinct feeling that something had been watching him all night. Something that breathed without lungs. Something that hungered. The hollow was calling. The name itself had once been sacred, passed down by generations of woodland creatures like an unspoken rule: don't go there. Never go there. Even man never ventured into it. Hunters would circle wide, their hounds whining, refusing to step near it. The birds refused to fly over. The earth there was older than memory, untouched, unloved, undisturbed. But now, it pulsed with evil. Bambi moved like a ghost, his steps cautious, yet deliberate. The closer he got to the hollow, the more the forest began to change. The trees grew tighter together, their trunks blackened, bark peeling away like dead flesh. Moss clung to everything, wet and rancid, clinging like mold on a corpse. The air smelled of decay and iron. Sweet and metallic. Like blood left out in the sun. The animals were gone. Not even insects stirred. No birds, no rustling, no breathing. But he heard them. Whispers. Tiny, cruel voices slithering between branches, giggling, mocking. Little Bambi, little fool. He comes alone. He thinks he's strong. They all thought that. Mother screamed, so sweet. He paused, his heart pounding. The voices knew his name. They knew everything. Something brushed against his leg. He looked down. A rabbit, no, what used to be a rabbit, dragged itself through the dirt. Its body was broken, twisted backward, its eyes gouged out, and its mouth sewn shut with thin tendrils of thorn. It moved, not with muscle or instinct, but command. And it wasn't alone. From behind trees, beneath roots, and under fallen leaves, they emerged, dozens of them. Twisted animals. Puppets of moss and sinew. Hollow-eyed. Grotesque mockeries of his old friends. Thumper's legs jutted at unnatural angles, one ear ripped off, dried blood smeared across his fur. Flower's back had been peeled open like a cloak, his scent glands torn out, leaving a pulsing black void in his chest. Even Friend Owl perched above with feathers plucked and bones sticking out like thorns. His beak had been replaced with a bark-like snout, and his head twisted 180 degrees as he stared down at Bambi. And then they spoke in unison. Join us. Bambi bolted. He ran without direction now, deeper into the rot. The path was gone. The trees closed in, thorns clawed at his sides. His own breathing echoed unnaturally loud in his ears. The roots under his hooves moved, trying to trip him, drag him down. And suddenly, he was there. The hollow. It wasn't a grove. It wasn't a meadow. It wasn't a place. It was a wound. A massive pit yawned before him, wide and circular, its edges blackened as if fire had licked the earth but left no heat. No light reached its bottom. No birds dared fly across. The ground around it cracked and bled a thick, dark sap. The trees around the edge were bent inward, their branches reaching like fingers toward the pit, as though praying, or feeding. In the center, suspended above the abyss by tangled roots and tendrils of flesh, hung a creature. Massive. Grotesque. Shapeless. Its skin was a patchwork of animal hides, deer, rabbit, fox, bear, owl, all sewn together with thorns and sinew. Antlers jutted from its skull like a crown of rot. And from beneath its pulsing form, hundreds of tiny limbs writhed, fawns, kits, cubs, dead, malformed, twitching in eternal agony. Bambi stared in horror. It was the forest. All of it. Twisted. Corrupted. Alive. And it opened its eyes. Dozens of them. All over its body. Each one bleeding. Each one familiar. His mother's eyes were among them. She stared at him. Her mouth opened slowly, her lips were sewn, but still, she spoke. "Why didn't you save me?" Bambi took a step back. His antlers scraped a branch, and the forest screamed. Not the creature, the entire forest. Trees groaned, earth split, and the sky above flashed black lightning through a blood-red haze. The air thickened. A shrill sound rang in his head, stabbing into his skull like nails. And then the creature moved. It descended. Slowly, impossibly, it lowered itself toward the pit, tendrils pulling it downward. As it did, the pit pulsed, glowing faintly with green, then red, then pure black. And from the void, something else began to rise. Bambi couldn't move. A hand, or a claw, broke the surface of the pit. Long, skeletal, covered in moss and glistening with sap. Then another. Then a face. No. Not a face. A mask. Wooden. Flat. Eyeless. But etched with Bambi's own antlers. It was him. Another Bambi. But this one was wrong. Its body was covered in moss, hooves cracked, and its chest had a gaping hole where a heart should be. Its mouth opened far too wide, revealing rows of jagged wooden teeth. It screamed, and the scream was his. It mimicked his every movement. Tilted its head when he did. Took a step forward. Then it galloped toward him. Bambi turned and ran. The forest was shifting, twisting, breaking apart. Trees cracked and fell without sound. The sky fractured like glass. He ran past rivers of blood, through groves filled with hanging animals, their bodies twitching, their eyes open. The doppelganger chased him. Faster. Closer. He could feel it gaining. He didn't dare look back. He burst into a clearing, the same clearing where he once played with Thumper and Flower. The sunlight that had once poured here was gone. Now, the trees bled. The flowers were dead things, open. Mouths of petals with teeth inside. Bambi turned. The other Bambi stood across from him. They stared at one another. Then the doppelganger spoke. "You are the rot." Bambi stepped back. "No. You let it happen. You let her die. You let us die." Its voice was dozens layered together, his mother, Thumper, Flower, even man. Bambi lowered his head, antlers poised. The doppelganger mirrored him. Then they charged. The clash of antlers echoed like thunder. Pain ripped through his skull as they locked, twisted, and shoved. The other Bambi was stronger, unnaturally so. It pushed with monstrous force, snapping branches and gouging the earth. But Bambi fought back. With every push, he remembered them. His mother. Thumper. Flower. The life before the darkness. He let out a cry, a primal, heartbroken roar, and shoved with all his strength. The doppelganger stumbled, faltered, and fell into the flowers' gaping mouths. They closed with a snap. Silence. Bambi stood, panting, blood dripping from his nose, legs shaking. But the hollow was still behind him. Still pulsing. And something else had begun to crawl from it. He turned slowly. Not just one. Hundreds. Creatures with no eyes, no mouths. Walking memories. Walking lies. All of them wearing the faces of those he loved. And above them all, the thing in the center of the pit whispered a single word into his mind. Return. The forest would not let him go. He had entered the hollow. Now the hollow was in him. And the transformation had already begun. He looked down at his legs. Roots. Growing from his skin. The roots crawled slowly up Bambi's legs like veins of frost on glass. He tried to rip them out. He scraped his legs against a fallen log, thrashed them against rocks, stomped the dirt until blood pooled around his hooves, but the roots wouldn't stop growing. With every heartbeat, they pulsed, digging deeper into his flesh. Feeding. He collapsed by a dead stream, panting. It wasn't water anymore. The stream was dry, but slick with a black slime that twitched like it was alive, like worms crawling through tar. He caught his reflection in a puddle. At first, he didn't recognize himself. His eyes weren't brown. They were black now. Black and glassy, with veins of red like lightning bolts crackling across the whites. His antlers had grown, twisted. What was once elegant and smooth had become gnarled, asymmetrical, bark-like. They dripped with something thick. Sap. Blood. Or both. And under the skin along his neck and chest, something moved. Slithering. Squirming. Growing. He retched. Nothing came up. The forest had infected him. Somewhere deep inside, the Bambi that had once played in the sunlight cried out in despair. But that voice was fading fast, drowned in whispers. Wear the crown. Let the forest remake you. You are the last. Become the first. He stumbled back to the hollow. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. The pull wasn't just in his body now, it was in his mind. The trees bowed as he walked. The ground moved to support him. The very air shifted. He was no longer an intruder. He was being welcomed. The pit had grown wider. The suspended creature, stitched together from generations of forest souls, had unraveled its lower half, dangling tendrils like spider silk over the chasm. From them, tiny creatures dropped like seeds, each deformed, eyeless, limping. They worshipped him. Hundreds of them. Mangled fawns, broken birds, skinned foxes. They gathered around his hooves, bleeding, trembling, whispering. Crown, crown, antler crown. A shape formed in the pit. Rising like a hand offering a gift. A branch, no, a crown. Twisted vines, bone, and antler. It shimmered with something darker than blood. An abomination made beautiful. An invitation to ascend. Bambi backed away. No. He turned to flee. But the forest moved. The path behind him warped. Trees interlocked to form a wall. Vines shot from the ground, wrapping around his legs, pulling, dragging. He screamed, thrashed, gored the earth with his antlers, but the vines were endless. They lifted him into the air. The crown floated toward him, cradled in the arms of the stitched creature above the pit. It leaned close, its face mere inches from his own. Dozens of eyes stared. Wept. Smiled. And then it whispered. You have always been ours. The crown pressed against his antlers. The pain was unbearable. It wasn't just weight, it was memory. Centuries of agony, betrayal, death. Every creature slaughtered by man. Every tree felled. Every nest crushed. Every cry silenced. He screamed. The scream echoed through the trees, shaking leaves from the branches, splitting trunks. Far away, deer froze in place. A fox dropped dead. Birds flew into rocks, blind. The forest absorbed his cry like a prayer. The crown fused to him. Roots pierced his skull, digging into his brain, injecting ancient thoughts. Dead languages. Old gods. Forest songs sung before the first sunrise. And then. Silence. He dropped. He stood. Something was different. The ground pulsed beneath him, obeying his heartbeat. Trees leaned toward him. The vines recoiled. Even the stitched creature above the hollow bowed. Bambi, had changed. His eyes were fully black now. His antlers towered like skeletal branches. His hide shimmered with moving runes, glowing beneath the skin. His steps left burning moss prints in the earth. He didn't breathe. He didn't need to. He was not prey. Not anymore. He was something else. Something older. The forest shuddered. He walked through the hollow like a king returning to his kingdom. The deformed creatures parted before him, their mouths sewn shut in reverence. Every step was accompanied by a soundless vibration, a thrum, like the heartbeat of something buried deep in the ground. Then he heard it. Laughter. But not like before. It was human. Children. Playing. Alive. He turned. Beyond the trees, through the mist, the edge of the forest had returned. The border. The place where the trees stopped, and the human world began. Bambi walked toward it, slowly. There they were. 3 children. A boy and 2 girls. Maybe 6, maybe 8 years old. Backpacks on their shoulders, skipping through the meadow at the forest's edge. They hadn't yet seen him. And when they did, they smiled. "Look," one girl whispered. "A deer." They approached, slowly. Innocent. Trusting. Bambi didn't move. Inside, something clawed at him. A scream. A memory. "Run," he whispered. But it came out as a rumble, low and distorted. More vibration than sound. The children laughed again. The boy stepped forward. "Can we feed you?" Bambi backed away. His hooves scorched the ground. The forest behind him began to twitch. Trees stirred. The stitched creature slithered forward, invisible to the children. Roots crept under their feet. Bambi turned toward the forest. "No," he growled. The forest paused. He turned back to the children. "Run." The boy blinked. "What?" Then a root shot from the ground, wrapping around the boy's ankle. He screamed. Bambi charged. His antlers sliced through the root, severing it. The ground screeched in pain. The trees howled. Vines lunged for him. He dodged, gore and sap flying. He trampled tendrils, shattered bark. He grabbed the children, one by one, nudging them, pushing them toward the meadow. "Go. Now." The stitched creature roared. A voice like thunder. Like thousands of animals screaming at once. "Traitor." Bambi turned. "I was never yours." He stood between the forest and the children, antlers lowered. The trees attacked. Dozens of roots surged from the ground, barbed and writhing. They slammed into him. One pierced his flank. Another coiled around his neck. But Bambi did not fall. He rose. With a cry that cracked stone, he unleashed the power of the antler crown. A wave of burning light exploded from his chest, incinerating the roots. Trees collapsed. The forest screamed. Behind him, the children ran. Into the sunlight. Away. And he smiled. For a moment, just a moment. He remembered who he was. Not a god. Not a monster. Just Bambi. A creature who loved the forest once. A creature who still had a soul. But the hollow was not done. The pit erupted. From its depths, something vast rose. Not stitched. Not deformed. Perfect. Tall. Antlered. Gleaming like obsidian. Its face was smooth, eyeless, mouthless. But it spoke without words. "You were chosen. You defied us. Now you will become us." Bambi braced himself. This was no longer his forest. But he would burn it to ash before he let it consume the world. The forest was burning, but it didn't scream in pain. It laughed. Black flames licked the bark of ancient trees, and instead of turning to ash, the wood twisted, curling inward like clenched fists. The ground pulsed beneath Bambi's hooves, and every vibration echoed through his skull like a dying heartbeat. The forest wasn't dying. It was awakening. Bambi stood at the threshold of the hollow, staring into its depths. The antler crown pulsed with searing energy, its thorned roots embedded deep into his skull. His body no longer felt fully his, he was stronger, yes, but there were new sensations, alien, invasive. His hooves had split open and hardened like blackened bark. His breath no longer fogged the air. His eyes didn't blink. He didn't need to. Yet something human still flickered deep inside. He had saved the children. And now, the hollow wanted revenge. Behind him, the forest's mockeries, those twisted animal husks, sown with vines and moss, shuffled back from the fire, retreating into the deeper dark. Even the stitched deity that had once hung over the pit recoiled now, its seams unraveling, its form collapsing into a heap of rotting skins and bone. The fire had cleansed it. But beneath the pit, something worse stirred. Bambi stepped to the edge. The chasm was no longer black. It glowed red, pulsing with veins of molten sap and muscle. The very earth had split open like an infected wound, revealing what the forest had hidden for centuries. The heart root. He descended into the hollow. There were no steps. No path. The air thickened like syrup. Gravity shifted. Up became down. He moved as if walking underwater. But he didn't stop. The deeper he went, the louder it became. A heartbeat. Slow. Immense. Writhing. The walls of the pit were alive, flesh wrapped in bark, throbbing with veins that glowed a sickly green. Strange shapes twitched beneath the surface, faces. Limbs. Horns. The trapped souls of forest guardians long gone. Some whispered. Others screamed. And one, his mother's, sang. It was the lullabies she used to hum when they hid in the thickets from man. But here, in the pit, the song was twisted, echoing backwards, layered in cries of anguish and wet, tearing sounds. At the bottom, Bambi found the source. The heart root was not a tree. It was an organ. A massive, bleeding mass of root, flesh, antler, and bone. It pulsed like a heart, anchored to the ground by thousands of tendrils. Embedded into its surface were the remains of gods, spirits, and forest lords, trapped and digested slowly. And at its center was a throne. Woven of human bones and animal skulls. Tall. Towering. Empty. Until Bambi approached. The moment he drew near, the throne responded, rising, adjusting, its shape twisting to match him. Vines coiled into armrests, antlers grew upward from the crown of the throne to mirror his own. It had been waiting for him. This was the forest's design. Not a death. Not a destruction. A rebirth. Bambi was to become the new god. The forest king. The one root. The soul of the forest, incarnated in antler and shadow. The crown on his head burned. He fell to his knees. Images exploded in his mind. Entire forests devouring towns in a single night. Animals marching like armies beneath blackened skies. Trees growing from corpses. Children sprouting roots. Cities sinking beneath forests that screamed. Deer with empty eyes standing in beds of human skulls. A world where nature ruled again, not in peace, but in vengeance. He clutched his skull, screaming. Blood dripped from his eyes. His mouth opened, and something long and black tried to crawl out, a root, twisting like a tongue. He fought it. I am not your god, he rasped. The heart root shuddered in fury. You are ours. The voice came not from the pit, but from inside him. The forest wasn't speaking to him. It was speaking through him. A spike of pain shot down his spine. His back arched. His skin cracked. Branches burst from his shoulder blades. His legs thickened. His spine lengthened. The deer was vanishing. Something older was taking shape. No. He slammed his antlers into the ground. Roots burst upward to stop him. He tore through them. The forest shrieked. He rose, trembling, bleeding, antlers glowing with raw, chaotic light. He turned toward the heartroot. "I will not become you," he growled. He charged. The heartroot responded instantly. Hundreds of tendrils shot out, like the legs of a spider, clawing toward him. He dodged one, impaled another. Flames erupted from his antlers with each impact. The pit roared. The earth cracked. But he reached the heartroot. And he stabbed it. His antlers, now sharpened with bark and bone, plunged deep into the core of the throbbing mass. The heartroot let out a shriek that wasn't sound but pure psychic agony. The forest above convulsed. Trees shattered. Animals fell. The sky split with black lightning. Bambi pushed deeper. The root pulsed. Something reached out from it. A memory, a shape. His mother. She stood before him, untouched, perfect, eyes filled with tears. "Please," she whispered, "don't kill the forest." He hesitated. But then he looked closer. Her body was wrong. Her limbs moved out of sync. Her shadow didn't match. Her eyes blinked vertically. She wasn't real. "Get out of me," he snarled. He wrenched his antlers sideways, ripping the heartroot open. A geyser of black sap erupted, coating the walls of the hollow, melting bones and bark alike. The crown shattered. A final scream rippled through the forest. Then. Silence. Total, unnatural silence. The ground beneath him stopped pulsing. The pit stopped glowing. Bambi collapsed beside the withering heartroot. He was covered in blood and sap. His antlers were cracked. His legs were numb. The throne had dissolved. The tendrils had withered. It was over. Or so he thought. From the center of the heartroot, something small began to rise. A seed. Tiny. Perfect. Gleaming. And from it, a whisper. "We begin again." Bambi's eyes widened. No. Roots shot up around the seed, forming a cocoon, fast, too fast. The blood on the ground was pulled in. The bones. The bodies. The screams. The memories. All absorbed into the cocoon. It pulsed once. Then a heartbeat. Then another. Faster. Growing. A new god. The forest wasn't dead. It had shed its skin. Bambi, broken and breathless, looked up at the rebirth of terror. He had failed. Again. And this time, it would not stop at the forest. The cocoon pulsed like a living tumor. It throbbed in steady rhythm with the land around it, the final beat of a heart once thought silenced. Bambi lay on his side near the ruined heartroot, his vision blurred, his breath shallow. Blood pooled beneath him, his own, and not his own. His antlers were splintered, torn where the crown had once fused. Sap and flesh clung to his wounds like leeches. He had failed. Above him, the forest held its breath. The cocoon rose from the ground like a blasphemous monument. It was neither bark nor flesh, but both, woven from the stolen essence of every creature devoured, every memory forgotten, every death unanswered. Screams echoed faintly from within the cocoon's core, some human, some not. And then. It split. Not slowly. Not gently. It ripped open, with a sound like snapping ribs and wet fabric tearing through sinew. From inside, something emerged, crawling on all fours, dragging itself forward as smoke spilled from its open mouth. The newborn. It looked like Bambi at first, if only at a glance. A deer. Slender. Graceful. Innocent. But this was a skin it wore like a lie. The fur was smooth, but too smooth, like polished porcelain. Its eyes were pitch-black voids, not reflecting light but consuming it. Its mouth, too wide, too long, stretched from ear to ear, filled with jagged teeth like broken glass. Antlers curled from its skull like twisted tree branches, sprouting twitching leaves that bled sap. It stood upright. And it smiled. "Father," it whispered. Bambi flinched. The voice wasn't childish. It wasn't even human. It was everything. Every scream, every death, every whisper in the dark, it was the forest. "No," Bambi gasped. "You are not my child." The creature cocked its head. "Then why did you make me?" It stepped toward him. With each footfall, the ground behind it decayed. Moss withered. Bones rose. Trees blackened. A trail of rot followed in its wake. Birds above dropped dead mid-flight. A fox erupted in boils and exploded in the bushes. The forest, once sick, was now dying faster. And the newborn was growing. Each second, it changed, its legs stretched, its body widened. Its antlers expanded like claws, dripping with liquid shadow. Its voice deepened. "I will show you what you've given me," it said. It opened its mouth wider, unnaturally wide, and screamed. The scream wasn't sound. It was force. The hollow shook. The sky above cracked. Trees fell in waves, as if blown apart by an invisible bomb. Bambi was launched backward, crashing against the Hartrud's remains. Above, the forest split open. A massive hole formed in the canopy, and beyond it was not sky, but void. Stars blinked out. Clouds twisted. And beyond the trees, the human world was visible. The town. The roads. The people. The children. The newborn stepped toward the opening. Bambi forced himself up, bones cracking, muscles tearing. "No." The newborn stopped, slowly turning its head. "There is nothing left to save. This forest belongs to me now. As will the world beyond." It stepped forward again. But Bambi moved too. He charged with all he had left: rage, sorrow, guilt, love. The memories of his mother, of Thumper, of Flower. The laughter of the children. The warmth of sun through trees long gone. His broken antlers glowed one last time. The impact was blinding. They collided like gods, one born of pain, the other of memory. The explosion rocked the hollow. The trees ignited. The earth split. The sky screamed. But the newborn didn't fall. Bambi did. He crashed to the ground, his body shattered, legs twisted beneath him. The newborn stood above him, watching. It knelt. "You're not a god," it said. "You're just the beginning." Its antlers stabbed into Bambi's chest. Agony surged through him. His body convulsed. His eyes rolled back. But then. He saw it. Not death. Not damnation. A root. Still alive. Deep, far below the hollow. Protected. Buried. Untouched. The true heart of the forest. The one the newborn hadn't found. And it was calling him. Bambi's eyes opened. The forest itself had not given up. Not yet. With his last breath, he whispered, "You missed something." The newborn tilted its head. "What?" Bambi smiled, blood pouring from his mouth. Me. He grabbed the creature's antlers with his last ounce of strength and pulled, drawing it closer, forcing its face inches from his own. The newborn snarled. "What are you doing?" But Bambi didn't answer. Instead, he let the forest take him, all of him. His body exploded in a burst of golden light. Roots erupted from the ground. Vines shot from the walls of the hollow. The earth beneath the newborn's feet cracked. From far below, the true heartroot awakened. A blinding, ancient pulse shot upward through the pit, striking the newborn directly in its chest. It screamed, not with confidence, not with power, but in fear. It stumbled back, smoke pouring from its antlers. No. No. The forest above shifted. Trees began to heal. Flowers bloomed, briefly. The sky cleared for just a second. But Bambi was gone. His body had vanished. His spirit now flowed into the true heartroot, beneath the hollow, beneath the rot. He had become something else. Not God. Not beast. A guardian. The newborn fled, limping, snarling, injured. It vanished into the dark corners of the forest, deeper than the hollow, deeper than time. It wasn't over. But it had been slowed. The forest slept. Wounded, grieving, but alive. And in its roots, Bambi now waited. Watching. Preparing. Because the newborn would return. And next time. It wouldn't be alone. The forest was silent, but the world beyond the trees had begun to scream. 3 days had passed since the ground cracked and the sky above the hollow split open like a bleeding wound. 3 days since Bambi's final act of sacrifice. And though the hollow had gone dormant, something had escaped, something born in the dark and swaddled in rot. The newborn had vanished into the deep groves of the forest's belly, but its influence had not stayed behind. It had begun with the animals. Rabbits with hollow eyes hopping into nearby towns at night, twitching in impossible angles before collapsing and melting into puddles of black sap. Deer with antlers like twisted bramble wandering highways at dusk, eyes glowing red, staring into car windows until engines failed. Flocks of birds flying in perfect circles above playgrounds, shrieking in backward song until their feathers turned to ash mid-flight. Then, it reached the people. Children waking up with bark under their fingernails. Parents finding roots growing from their walls. School teachers vomiting beetles in the middle of lessons. Entire neighborhoods forgetting what year it was. What day. Who they were. And beneath the local park, the ground had begun to pulse. Detectives came. Priests. Scientists. None returned. And the forest, oh, the forest, stood silently, watching it all unfold. Bambi's presence still lingered deep in the roots. He wasn't dead. Not truly. But he had become something else, a spirit tangled in the deepest veins of the earth, trapped between life and afterlife, between memory and myth. He could still see. He could feel the trees cry out in warning. He could sense the newborn moving like a virus, spreading its touch through soil, through seed, through story. Because now, people were talking. Whispers spread of the antler man seen at the forest's edge, watching houses at night. Of children drawing deer with human faces. Of voices in baby monitors that whispered in unison, "We are growing." But no one believed. No one acted. Until the burning began. It started in a nursing home. An elderly woman began screaming one night, claiming a deer was standing over her, smiling with teeth like nails. The nurses found her body hollowed out, every bone removed without breaking the skin. Across town, trees erupted from a boy's bedroom floor, sprouting overnight, growing through his bed and pinning him to the ceiling. He never screamed. He laughed until his lungs gave out. And then the fires came. The trees that had once lined Main Street ignited with no fuel. No spark. Just rage. Black flames danced silently, melting pavement, burning upward instead of down. Smoke rose, but it didn't go into the sky. It twisted into shapes, faces, mouths, antlers. And through it all, the newborn walked unseen. It no longer resembled Bambi. Its body had grown. Its limbs elongated. It was no longer pretending to be a deer. Its mouth stretched from chest to neck. Its antlers had multiplied, reaching out like antennae sensing trauma. Beneath its skin, human faces twitched, alive, weeping, awake. Each soul it consumed was added to its form. Each death made it stronger. It remembered Bambi's power. It wanted more. And in the blackness where Bambi now dwelled, he could feel it too. Feel the pain. The twisting of the old world into something unnatural. But he was not helpless. His spirit pulsed within the true heartroot, not the corrupted one above the hollow, but the original, buried beneath all memory. It had hidden from the infection. It had kept him alive. And now, he began to awaken. Branches spread through the forest floor, reaching beyond the hollow. Roots tunneled beneath cities. Every fallen leaf, every speck of dust whispered Bambi's name. The trees would rise again. But they would not rise in kindness. Not this time. Because something had shifted in Bambi. What he'd done to protect the forest had only fed the infection. What he'd sacrificed had been twisted. He wasn't returning as a fawn. He wasn't coming back as the innocent prince of the glade. He was coming back as vengeance. And his first warning would come in dreams. Suburban neighborhood, 2:19 a.m. Little Ellie Watterson sat up in bed, her face pale, soaked with sweat. Her breath caught in her throat. She had dreamed of Bambi again. But this time, he wasn't smiling. He was crying blood. And behind him, the trees were walking. She padded quietly to the window, clutching her blanket. Outside, everything looked still. Quiet. But then she saw it. At the edge of the woods behind her house, where the trees had once thinned into nothingness, stood a deer. But not just any deer. Its antlers glowed faintly, like fireflies. Its body shimmered like the surface of a pond, never still, never whole. And behind it, something moved. Something massive. Dozens of deer. Hundreds. All hollow-eyed. All silent. All waiting. The first deer stepped forward, slow, purposeful. The grass beneath it turned black. Trees bowed in its presence. Ellie pressed her hand to the glass. It looked straight at her. And then, it spoke. Not with words. With roots. They burst from the ground, cracking through the sidewalk, curling up the walls of her house. Vines smashed through windows. Bark slithered across her floor. And still, no one screamed. Her parents slept peacefully as trees burst through the floorboards. Her brother laughed in his sleep as moss filled his lungs. Ellie stared in awe as the deer opened its mouth and whispered. He's coming back. Elsewhere. Miles away, deep beneath the ruined hollow, Bambi's spirit surged. The last piece of him, his heart, had found a spark again. The vines wrapped tighter around his essence, coiling with purpose. From the shadows, something bloomed. A flower with petals like antlers. A heartbeat in its center. The forest wasn't healing. It was arming. Preparing. Because the newborn had left the forest. And now it was the world's turn to suffer. Final scene, the city. A child screamed as roots burst through the cracks of the playground. In the sewers, rats gathered around a stillborn fawn, born from the corpse of a man. At a zoo, every deer in captivity stood up at once, turned toward the east, and snapped their necks in perfect synchrony. And at the heart of downtown, in a church filled with grieving townspeople praying for peace, a priest lit a candle. Only to watch the flame twist into the shape of an antler. He dropped it in horror as the crucifix on the wall bent inward. And from the walls, painted in blood, appeared the words. The forest remembers. The sky was bleeding. A dull red sun hovered above the world like an infected wound, casting rust-colored light over cities that no longer slept, no longer prayed, no longer believed in gods that listened. The trees had reached the pavement. Moss curled around skyscrapers. Parks were no longer places of play, they were birthing grounds. Bark tore through floorboards, roots slithered up from sewers, and vines dragged children silently into the dark. The newborn walked among them. Now massive, grotesque, crowned in black antlers stretching across the skyline. Its legs were made of fused limbs, animal and human. Faces pulsed beneath its skin like trapped souls, whispering without mouths. It didn't run, didn't chase. It didn't have to. Everything it touched bloomed into madness. Hospitals turned into nests. Churches wept blood from their walls. The statues in parks broke open, revealing twitching lungs and throbbing wooden hearts. The sky cracked and screamed as trees erupted from airplane runways and highways. But the newborn was no longer growing. It was waiting. Because it could feel him. Beneath the deepest root. Beneath the screams. Bambi was returning. And this time, he was not coming back as prey. Beneath the hollow, now a grave of gods. The earth split. From deep within the true heart root, something ancient stirred. Not the forest. Not the creatures. Not the trees. But something older. Something pure. A single sound echoed across the world, a heartbeat, so powerful it shook buildings, cracked mountains, and sent animals fleeing in terror. The soil erupted. A pillar of twisted antlers and radiant light exploded from the ground, ripping upward through stone and time. Black roots snapped like broken ribs. The hollow crumbled. And then. He emerged. Bambi. But no longer a faun. No longer a prince of the glade. He was a god of vengeance. Towering. Radiant. His fur was made of light and bark, his antlers like burning galaxies of root and gold, writhing with power. His eyes were orbs of molten green and orange, older than sunlight, deeper than death. With each step, the ground healed. But not gently. Violently. The false forests, grown by the newborn, died. Trees twisted, cracked, screamed. The stolen animals burst into flame, revealing twisted machinery and bone beneath fur. The sky blackened further, as if the sun feared what had returned. The world was ending. Not with fire. Not with ice. But with memory. The final confrontation, ground zero, the hollow ruins. The newborn waited, its twisted body looming above a ruined city. Its mouth spread wide. You should have stayed dead. Bambi stepped into the broken street, his hooves glowing, his antlers humming with the energy of 1,000 lost souls. I was never dead, Bambi said. I was becoming. The newborn screeched. The world tore. The battle began. Bambi charged, a beam of golden light splitting the horizon behind him. The newborn countered. Vines snapping like whips, buildings crumbling beneath its weight. They collided with a shockwave that flattened entire city blocks. Trees turned to ash. Rivers boiled. Bambi's antlers tore through the newborn's chest, ripping free dozens of trapped souls. Each one screamed as it flew upward, finally released. The newborn shrieked in fury and stabbed a spear of bone into Bambi's side. Sap spilled like blood. But Bambi did not fall. He burned brighter. From the heavens, dead stars ignited. Storm clouds split. Wind howled with the voices of the lost. I am the forest, Bambi roared. I am the forgotten. I am the pain. But I am also the flame. He rose into the air, his form shifting, no longer just a deer, but a god of antlers and grief and truth. His legs became roots. His eyes, suns. His crown, a writhing halo of life and death. The newborn tried to flee. But it was too late. Bambi plunged his burning antlers deep into the creature's skull. The scream that followed was not one sound. It was all sounds. The cries of slaughtered animals. The weeping of children lost in the woods. The snapping of branches. The roar of a forest burned to the ground. And the silence that comes before new growth. The newborn burst into black spores. Its body collapsed into dust. Its spirit, torn apart by the light of Bambi's flame, was scattered into the roots of the very trees it tried to corrupt. Aftermath, the new growth. The battle was over. But the world had changed. The sky cleared for the first time in weeks. The cities were cracked, but still standing. Survivors crawled from wreckage, blinking into the light. And where the newborn had fallen, a tree grew. A massive, shimmering tree with leaves like deer eyes and bark like antlers. It grew fast, impossibly fast, its roots spreading beneath streets, into homes, into hearts. The tree of memory. At its base stood Bambi, no longer glowing, no longer monstrous. Just Bambi. His fur was dull, his eyes tired. His body scarred. But he stood. Alive. Watching. Guarding. The forest, the world, the people, would not forget again. But even as light returned, a whisper echoed through the leaves. The forest sleeps, but never dies. Final scene, deep underground. Beneath the world, where even roots dared not grow. A single tooth remained. Twisting. Waiting. And a voice, soft as wind through branches, whispered. We begin again.